How does Florida State football change if the NCAA eliminates the spring transfer portal window?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is all about the transfer portal, how it impacts Florida State's recruiting, NIL, and their roster overall. In case you have not seen, the NCAA is getting ready to have a meeting that will possibly get rid of the spring transfer portal window altogether. Not just change the amount of time or when it happens, eliminate the spring transfer portal window. This podcast will define how that changes things for not only Florida State, but for every program in the country. But as important as the transfer portal has been for the Noles, this has some serious ramifications. So let's dive in. Number one, this does not mean that the December window would go away too. And they're technically negotiating on which one they would get rid of. Let me end that for you real quick. There is zero chance you can get rid of the December window of the two, and here's why. College coaches will freak out because they want guys to transfer in January to go through all the conditioning, all the strength training, and of course, spring practice, so they can have at least a pretty good idea of their depth chart. Zero chance that's going away. I know a lot of people would like to see the December window kind of be, there's just no way to do it. It's going to be a pain forever. That's just the way it is. Get used to it, and college coaches hate it too. But if you're going to have transfers that have immediate eligibility, you got to have a window. Right now, I believe it's December 9th through the 7th of January. And for teams that have a bowl game that kind of screw things up or whatever, there's like an extra 5-day window. Teams can have guys get out from that program if they play in the bowl, etc. There's some good things in there for that. Let's talk about how that impacts your plans from a year-long perspective. Number one, if you go in needing, an offensive tackle, a corner, whatever it is, as a top priority, if for whatever reason you do not succeed in filling your need, at least in part, you've got spring. Well, now you don't. If this happens, and by all accounts, it's going to, coaches want to get rid of the spring window, just so you know. They want to get rid of it. They want to spend less time dealing with that and have a little bit more free time. I get it. And they want to deal with fewer headaches. And this next part. Certain schools in particular, Alabama is a great example, stealing players off other teams' rosters. There's a lot of teams that do it in some capacity, but that's a problem. And after spring ball, the spring transfer window is super important right now because it was just crazy how much the NIL money was, especially for D tackles. The kid that transferred from TCU to Oklahoma got like $800,000 for a year. I mean, he's really good, but good Lord, that's a lot of cash. So the problem is you have to find a way to stop some of that. Well, if there's no window at all, you can't do it. I also think the NCAA is trying to get rid of a little bit of their own liability. Schools eventually trying to sue them or players or whatever. It's going to happen in a lot of different ways. It has quite a few times here in the last 10 years for certain over NIL, but I think there's some of that too, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole today. As for Florida State, this is going to change all the things I just talked about there. You can't miss in December now. Or else you kind of go back to the old days, which in some ways I like. Bowden used to have a lot of guys turn pro early. Oh, Florida State's going to have a young team. How are they going to be able to survive? Well, when you constantly recruit top 5 classes, and usually top 2 for the Noles back in the 90s, next man up. Their sophomore was better than your senior. Now you got to coach them up to prove it. They still needed some technical refinement. They may not have been a complete player by the end of their spring going into their sophomore year, but you still had summer and fall camp, and then you play them some early in the year and you bring them along. It's called development. What a shock. Florida State did a tremendous job back in the day of doing that. Jimbo did that a lot. Norvell has done that a lot. If this comes to fruition, it will definitely put more emphasis on just something that I think should be there anyway. And that's just the ability to coach and young men growing up. College is about learning, not just on the field, but off. This is part of it. The expectation that, hey, we got a big hole here. Somebody turned pro, blah, blah, blah. We've got to have a step up. Quarterback position. They don't get the transfer portal guy they want this offseason. They got some young guys. Maybe they don't even go that route. Maybe they brought Glenn play some this year and they like him. I don't know. But if they miss on quarterback, somebody's got to win the job in the spring, be the guy. If they miss on somebody at offensive line, then somebody's got to step up and be the guy. Whatever it is, I'm cool with that. But it does change how you do things. Here's the one spot that is interesting. Florida State obviously is not doing well at defensive line right now, but you're going to lose some guys after this year. They could lose all four of their down linemen. People can make all the jokes they want based on how Florida State played against Tech. And believe me, I've hammered them enough if you've watched this podcast recently. But that's a lot of players to lose. If that's the case, you have to hit on the portal in December. Two parts here. Number one, if there's no spring window, and by the way, this is allegedly going to be implemented immediately, so there wouldn't be a spring window. This is not like in a year or two. That means you got to hit in December. But with that, with everybody knowing it, can you imagine the price point for signing an elite defensive lineman, whether end or tackle, this December? If it was already crazy, what do you think it's going to be in December? You could be paying seven figures for a year, some of these teams. I don't think Florida State will go that route. I really don't. I don't think Norvell and his staff want to be in that market. Oklahoma, Auburn, definitely Miami. They got maybe except for Phil Knight, about the biggest booster there is. Ohio State. Some of those programs might do it, but there's a lot of high risk with taking mercenaries, people that is looking for the highest dollar. So I think Norvell and them would be a little more selective. And again, rely on their own players and incoming recruits to make it happen. As a little extra bonus with recruiting, speaking of that, this means something else that's very important, and that's going to be, it might change how you look at recruiting this fall, including the junior college ranks. That's something we're going to talk about next here on Locked On Seminoles, because if you don't hit, you could be left out in the cold come next spring. Are you tired of having to prepare meals all the time, especially if you're trying to get in better shape? Well, Factor Meals is an option for you. Fuel up with Factor Meals, no prep, no mess meals. You can get stuff that's very protein happy, keto happy, calorie smart, and it's always fresh, not frozen meals. You've got over 35 different meals, 60 add-ons to choose from, and you can crush your wellness goals no matter what they are or when they are with Factor Meals. Make delicious opportunities for your breakfast, dessert, or anything else with Factor Meals. Also, treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. So head over to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Also, make sure that you check out eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride alive. Your ride or die alive, eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle to keep it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and all the prices you want, it's up to you to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit, only available to United States customers. Speaking of NIL and how it impacts the portal, if you get rid of the spring window, you're also going to have a little bit more importance for recruits to be impact guys. So the players that are a little more, as we like to say in the recruiting industry, polished, players that have a little more natural size are going to be coveted even more. So again, the top percent, they've got a chance to hit. Now, some kids are probably thinking, well, I'm going to get more NIL now. Again, this is going to be a very small sliver, but a kid that you're competing for right now, and it's like $100,000 or something, just use a base number. If they go into this, especially for those teams that think they have a chance to make the playoff next year, the year after, etc., D-line, corner, offensive tackle, quarterback, oh boy, it could get really ugly. It only takes one team to truly go off the market realm and just go crazy. Look at Nico Iamalewa, the kid from Tennessee. He got something reported like $8 million over 4 years or so. I don't know how much accuracy there is to that, but he got a ton of money to go to University of Tennessee. I don't think anybody else offered him that kind of cash, but that's where he went. It just takes one. And it also just takes one out of the blue. If you think you got a kid right up to signing day, and you could be put in a bad spot, especially a quarterback you don't want to miss. So this is important. Again, let's use the example with defensive line. Florida State's recruiting D-line much better. Love the guys they've got committed in this class. Love the opportunity for the upside. And a couple of them might even play early, like Javion Hilson, the kid out of Cocoa. He's one of the best pass rushers, if not the best, in the country for the class of 25. That's great. But what if somebody comes in and offers him something that Florida State doesn't want to now because they're in a really bad spot? And although they don't really want a freshman to have to come in and play early, they'll take him as opposed to not having something because they missed on some of their other opportunities last year. They're not sure about the portal. They want to double down on their opportunities they're going to spend on high school and the portal. Somebody like Oklahoma might. They got deep pockets. Somebody like Texas might. They got deep pockets. Georgia, Bama, there's all kinds of programs. It makes things a mess in December. As much easier as it will be, that April, May area, and you just focus on high school recruiting, if they get rid of the spring transfer portal window with this October vote, high school recruiting is going to be nuts. It also does one thing that I do like. Some of the JUCO kids get kind of overlooked now. Maybe, possibly, a few more of them will get chances. They've already been to college for a year or two, and they've got a little more physical development. Florida State or anybody else could go and find a junior college kid to at least contribute. Not all the guys have to be instant impact studs, but if you get enough guys that have development, have multiple years of eligibility, which is something that Norvell and his staff try to do even with portal guys for the most part, it's going to help your program. It's going to help it a lot. That might be something that Florida State does. They've always dabbled a little bit with the junior college ranks, but I'm curious to see if it comes a little bit more important just across the landscape if this comes into effect. All right. Think about this in whatever perspective that you want, but the last part, there might be a few fringe guys that just play a little bit for the Noles, or it could be anybody. It could be Tennessee, whatever school, that are maybe the third string defensive end. Maybe it's the second string offensive tackle we didn't play a ton. There aren't going to be a lot of D linemen, O linemen in this upcoming window. There's just not. There never are. You might ask that guy back for a 5th or 6th year, whatever it is, that otherwise you didn't. So when we get to December and the window closes in January, let's say the Noles wanted 2 offensive tackles, whatever it may be. They get 1. Do not be surprised if when they announce on the second signing day, it's still the first February, well, Wednesday in February for that second one. The first one is December 4th. They'll probably have more announcements about roster management than they do actual recruiting because there's hardly any recruits left at that point. Do not be surprised if there's something that's along the lines of Norvell saying, hey, we've got this player, and this player back. You might talk a little injury, off-season surgery, how kids are doing that just enrolled, stuff like that. But there might be a few extra guys coming back. Florida State, like any other program, has to manage their roster to the best of their ability. And sometimes the best option could just be a player that's been in your program, maybe not been super successful, but at least, again, been through the program for a number of years, knows the system, been a good guy, a graduate student. That's better than getting nothing because, again, if the transfer portal is not open in the spring, what other option do you have? There might be a few guys relied on across college football next year that don't even play much right now. They're on a roster that you don't even think about. They close this window, it's going to be really, really interesting. that's going to wrap it up here for Locked On Seminoles. We're going to finish with that. Today, I'm headed to Tallahassee, ironically, do a little scouting. Going to go to the Thomas County Central game where Charlie Ward used to play. And then I will be back tomorrow to talk a little football, a little recruiting overall, and just kind of prepare for the games on Saturday. Remember, Noles will play Monday night against Boston College. On Sunday, I'm going to finish up with some opportunities with their defense. Going to talk a little linebacker for them, talk a little DB, and some of the matchups. Florida State needs to get the ball down the field. Going to hit on the passing game that Noles need to do, some concepts, and some overall stuff like that. But once again, thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Y'all have a great one. I'll see you soon.